In this recording, I want to talk about the sexual abuse that I suffered as a small boy, as a young boy. I don't, there's a lot to, there's a lot to say about that. So this might end up being more than one recording. And it's going to be difficult for me to get through. But I think it's important to talk about it for a lot of different reasons. One of those is we just don't talk enough about sexual abuse and the fact that it happens to boys, and the fact that we don't talk about it and people secret allows it to continue. So we have this stereotypical victim of sexual abuse, a perpetrator. Everybody kind of imagines a 14-year-old girl and a stepfather. And the reality is young boys get sexually abused by both men and women. I can't remember the statistic the last time I checked. I think it was 1 in 6. 1 in 6 boys in America suffer that. So that's a pretty big number. And I was one of 6. So I think what I want to do in this recording is tell you a little bit about what I remember from my abuse. And I won't get into graphic detail, but I'll tell you what I remember. There's a lot I don't remember. And so we can talk a little bit about that. I have what they call repressed memories, which is I don't even know what the words are. It is repressed memories are, I want to say they're a trip. I don't know what the right words are. I'm going to struggle for the right words. They're unlike anything I've ever experienced. I could say that. If you haven't suffered, if you don't have repressed memories, it's going to be hard to wrap your brain around that. But I'll talk a little bit about what they are, how I've experienced them. And I want to just say right here at the beginning of the recording that every human being is unique. I'm fairly certain that although there are common patterns, every situation of sexual abuse is probably unique. But I could talk a little bit about my experience. Maybe that'll help other people. And if nothing else, like if you don't take anything else away from this recording, I hope you take away the fact that young boys are sexually abused. And you have to protect your young boys like you do your daughters. You have to protect your sons and your nephews like you do your daughters and your nieces. And your grandsons like you do your granddaughters. So let me tell you what I remember. I know I was sexually abused. I know that abuse was severe. I know that it occurred over a long period of time and multiple instances of abuse. I'm fairly certain that it involved, and this is really hard for me to say, I'm fairly certain that it involved actual intercourse of some type. And I'm also fairly certain that it involved either physical torture or the threat of physical torture. I don't fully understand why the person who abused me thought that was necessary. I don't know if keeping me terrified was part of how they kept it a secret, or if it was some deviant part of their sexual gratification. I don't know, but I know that I'm fairly certain it involves some physical torture. I'm not sure if that was cutting or burning or other types of ways to inflict severe physical pain, but I know those things were combined. I know it happened when I was very young. I'm fairly confident I'm talking about between the ages of 4 years old and 8 years old. I don't know exactly when. As I said, I think the abuse continued for a fairly lengthy amount of time, so it may have been a fairly wide range in that bracket of 4 to 8. I don't continue past that. I certainly don't I don't remember anything happening when I was a teenager. So I think it was all preteen. I think I was pretty young. I know my abuser was a woman. I know that it wasn't a member of my immediate family. That's about all I know. I don't know my abuser's name. Can't picture her face. I know she really hurt me. She really hurt me physically and emotionally. I know she hurt me a lot, over and over again. But I don't know who she is, and that's part of the repressed memory. So let me talk a little bit about that. You know what I remember now. So what do I not remember? I don't remember who this woman was. I don't remember what she looked like. I don't remember her relationship to me or my family. I have to assume that was someone that my parents trusted a great deal, or the abuse wouldn't have continued for as long as it did. The other part of having repressed memories, oh, let me tell you what a repressed memory is. A repressed memory is a memory of something that happens to you typically when you're a child. Basically, your conscious mind buries that memory in your subconscious. So you're not aware that it happened. And I don't know if this is true of all people that have repressed memories, but I remember almost nothing of my childhood preteen, which is crazy. I can count on one hand, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen very short memories of when I was a child. But for the most part, everything that happened to me before I was a teenager is basically blank. Like I said, I don't know if that's normal because I've never talked to anybody else about it. I'm not sure how much of their childhood most people remember. I remember almost nothing that happened before I was a teenager. So I have the feeling that's part of the repressed memories. My conscious brain just erased a huge part of my life. And so I don't remember my abuse. I don't remember the details of it. For me, most of what I remember is emotion. And I remember severe pain, physical pain, and I remember severe emotional pain. And more than anything, I remember absolute abject terror of that person and what she did to me. It is the kind of fear that I cannot describe to you in words. For her and what she did to me, I experienced terror unlike anything I have ever known otherwise in my life. Like debilitating, heart-stopping terror. I've talked about it before. Describe it as an emotional flashback. I have triggers. It could be a smell or a sound or a place or when I see another woman's hairstyle or her type of shoes or her body language, gestures. It's just, I experience, I don't know how else to describe it other than to tell you, I basically go back to being a small boy and I experience the intense emotions of a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old boy. I don't become completely detached from the current moment, reality, but it's a little bit like it's almost reality is shrouded in a dense fog. I don't know how else to explain it. So it's like being teleported back into time and I can only see reality through a foggy mirror, foggy window, I guess. Last those flashbacks vary in intensity from pretty mild, I can get through it, The longer ones can be pretty intense. When I have a bad flashback, I experience seizures. They're called psychosomatic seizures that I can't control. So I experience seizures. I get nauseous. I don't know why, but I get pain and cramping in my legs. I curl up into a ball. It's a pretty horrible thing to go through when I have a bad flashback. And while I'm experiencing those physical symptoms, I typically am experiencing the intense emotions, pain, emotional pain, physical pain, and terror, fear and terror. And a lot of times when I'm having a bad flashback, I'll be begging her to stop touching me and just to stop hurting me. I try not to let other people see that. I try not even to let my wife see it. She handles it really well, but I try not to let her see it. I had my first flashback when I was in my early 30s. So for the first 30 years, I didn't understand that I had been sexually abused at all. I had no clue. I had no idea that I had been a victim of abuse. And started having flashbacks in my 30s, early 30s. Didn't even understand what they were. Didn't understand what my flashbacks were. Started to understand a little more as the flashbacks continued. I was in a little bit of denial at first. I suppose that's probably normal. If any part of this is normal, that's probably normal to be in denial. My wife helped me through some of that. She told me, somebody hurt you. Somebody hurt you really bad. I think that helped me to come to grips with it and understand it alone. I don't have flashbacks as much as I did in the beginning. So I'm a little better at controlling them now to the extent that they can be controlled. There's still a couple places there's a couple physical places I can no longer go. I suspect I saw my abuser in those places, or they remind me of places where I saw my abuser. Sometimes when I see sexual abuse portrayed in a TV show or a movie, or I hear about it, that can sometimes trigger a flashback. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but I got to be careful with it. So that's, I don't remember very much. What I do remember comes to me in flashbacks, which are pretty intense. For a long time, I thought I was crazy. And I thought nothing happened to me. And I thought I was just crazy and that my brain was making it up. And I know now that's not true. But for a while, I thought I was just losing my mind. Which is tough. My family didn't help with that. Talk about that maybe in a different recording. My family didn't help. So what else do I want to tell you? So let me maybe talk a little bit about some of the challenges of not remembering everything. It makes me angry because I feel like my abuser got away with it. She got away with it. Maybe she hurt other people after she hurt me. And I wish I could have remembered who she was, because I could have stopped her maybe. It makes me angry. It makes me angry that she got away with it. I get angry at her. I get angry at myself for bearing the memories. I used to get really angry. I've come to peace with it more now. I understand that to some extent the bearing of the memories was just a survival mechanism, just based on some research I've done. But I wish I remembered who she was, because I want to confront her and I want to stop her. And I don't get to do that. I don't get to do that because my own mind has blinded her identity. That's a tough thing. That's a tough thing to swallow. So that's hard. Not remembering makes me angry. It made me really angry the first few years. Not remembering means I don't get to ask her the questions that I want answers to. Man, do I really want some answers. If I had a chance to talk to her, I think the most important thing I'd want to know is why she chose me. I don't even know why that matters. But I want to know, why did she choose me? Why didn't she choose some other boy? What was it about me that made her decide that I was going to be her victim? Was it because I was shy and quiet? Is it because she thought I would keep it a secret? Is it because she thought she could scare me? I want to know that, even though I know it doesn't matter. I think I would ask her if she understood when she was hurting me what it was going to do to me for the rest of my life. I guess part of me wants to ask that question because I feel like there's no way she could have known, because if she would have known, she would have stopped. Was that few hours or days total time that she got to exercise power over me and have that sexual gratification? Was it worth it? Was it worth the damage she did to me? I would ask her that. The other thing, probably the hardest part, is I feel like not remembering who this woman was has denied me the ability to forgive her, to truly forgive her. And I think I have forgiven her. I have forgiven her to the extent that I can. And that took a long time. I think I can safely say now that I've done that. I don't want revenge. I don't want her to hurt, and I don't want her to suffer. I think part of that is because I understand she was probably also a victim herself of sexual abuse at some time, because that's the pattern. And so, in some strange way, it allows me to empathize with her. And I also think being able to forgive her is a beautiful way to reflect God's love and God's mercy. And that's something that's something I want to be able to do. And so to the extent that I'm able, I hope that I've forgiven her. I hope that if I ever remember who she is and I get to talk to her, that I'm able to tell her, I understand that you were also hurting, and I forgive you for what you did. Maybe you don't know until you're in that situation and you're confronting the person that hurt you, but I would hope and pray to God that I would be able to tell her that. But part of not remembering means I don't get to fully forgive her. Because how do you fully forgive a ghost? Yeah, if you can. I don't know if you can fully forgive a ghost. And she's a ghost. She's a ghost that hurt me a huge amount, but she's a ghost. And so, in some ways, not being able to remember has denied me the opportunity to fully forgive, and I would pay a high price to remember. If I could hike to the top of a frozen mountain and find the answer there, I would go. In a heartbeat, I wouldn't even hesitate. I would pay a high price. As I've gotten older, I've tried to tell myself that remembering her doesn't matter and it isn't that important, but there's still deep inside of me a part that just wants to know who she is. And I might not ever know, and I have to come to peace with that, but it's hard. Maybe I'll wrap up by just talking a little bit about how this has affected my life. And I'll talk about this later in a different recording, but sometimes it's hard for me to disentangle my depression from the consequences of my sexual abuse. So I'll do the best I can. Yep. My wires got crossed up, without a doubt. Demons. Some deeply entrenched demons that I deal with. I think that's rooted deeply in the sexual abuse that I suffered. And so that fighting with those demons takes a toll on me. Makes me tired. Thankfully, I've had a pretty normal, healthy relationship with my wife, which I'm grateful for. Some of that is obviously because I didn't remember a lot the first 10 years we were married. Thankfully, it hasn't done a huge amount of damage to my marriage. My wife has seen some things I wish she wouldn't have seen. But yeah, it's crossed my wires up, and I deal with some demons. Some behaviors that I think are probably not normal that I have to fight. I think God helps me with that. It makes me question I know it shouldn't, but it makes me question my fitness as a man. I know I was only a boy, but there's part of me that wonders why I didn't stop it. Why I wasn't strong enough to stop it. There's part of me that wishes she could see me now as a grown man. There's part of me that thinks I'd like to see her try and do that to me now. I have the feeling that situation would turn out a little bit different. But I wonder why I wasn't strong enough to stop it, and I wonder what she did that made me so afraid, so terrified. Makes me feel like a coward sometimes. So I deal with that guilt, the guilt for not stopping it, and the guilt for being a coward. I think she probably changed my relationship with women forever. Yeah, I talked about it before, but I was ready for an adult relationship with a woman way too young. Way too young, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with being sexually abused by an older woman. By a woman that was a lot older than me. A girl or a woman that was significantly older than me. I'm sure that had repercussions there. That led to some early heartache for me, because I was trying to find adult relationships when I was too young and when the girls my age were too young. So that caused problems. I'm so happy that my marriage has turned out as well as it has, despite the fact that I suffered that abuse. I'm thankful that I broke the cycle. I haven't abused anybody, and I don't. I tell myself I would take my own life before I allowed myself to do something to another person that was done to me. So I'm very proud of breaking that cycle. That's a hard cycle to break, I think. That's why it continues. And I've been able to do that. I've been able to break that cycle. So I try and deal with my abuse in a healthy way. Even though there's a lot of emotional damage there, I think I've coped fairly well. So if you're listening to this, what do I want you to remember? If there's one thing you take away from this, I hope you remember that you have to protect your little boys. The little boys that you love, they need to be protected. There are women predators out there that will do horrible things to your little boy. And sometimes, I don't think we realize that. There are women just as every bit as evil as the men that sexually abuse children. And they're selfish. And they're cruel. You have to guard your boys and keep them safe from people like that. And there's part of me that wants to know I wasn't worth enough to keep safe. I don't understand why there wasn't anybody in my life that loved me enough to keep me safe from her. I just don't understand why they let her hurt me so bad for so long. I just don't understand. So if you remember one thing from my story, remember that you have to protect the boys that you love and you have to keep them safe. Whoever abused me had the complete trust of my parents. It was someone they trusted. So you have to be careful who you trust as a parent. And I think there was some obvious signs that I had been abused that my family ignored. So don't do that. If you have a boy or a young man that you love that's been abused, you need to help them understand what happened and start the healing process so they can get through that. So don't forget 1 in 6. You know a boy that has been abused. 1 in 6. Don't ever forget that. I was 1 in 6.